Okay, we're going to call the Board of Selectmen meeting to order. Tonight is March 4th, 2025. I'm Bob Carlson, the first selectman. Also with me is Selectman Brett Mastriani, missing this evening, but might be calling in as Selectwoman Nicole Porter. And we have Admin Finance Officer Suzanne Thero. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, liberty and justice for all.
Okay, is there any public comment? Excuse me. Anybody public comment either in person or online? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from February 18th and February 19th. Want to do that, Brett? And I'll second since Nicole's not here.
Make a motion to approve minutes from February 18th, 2025.
Okay, I'll second that motion. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that's a 2-0. And Nicole's absent.
Okay.
The
So
second
make a
one,
motion to approve the joint meeting Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance minutes from February 19th, 2025.
okay, I'll second that. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, 2-0. Thank you, Brett. Are there any comments by the selectmen? So one of them might be on a plane, the other one's here. Any comments by Brett that you'd like to talk about?
I'd just like to thank you and the troopers for helping crack down on sale of the nicotine vapes at our local gas stations. So you and Jason went out and really did the undercover investigation and cracked down on two, especially the two that are so close to our schools. And we know it's an issue at the schools, and getting that word out, talking to the administrators and seeing the effects of it. It's really important to try to get the word out, not just to those businesses, but to the parents of the residents in our town to know it's a problem and try to be vigilant in how we handle it. So I appreciate you guys going out and doing that.
Well, thank you. I'll say it was something different. Every once in a while, Jason invite me to go out with him to either do, to mitigate speeding or something like this. When he came up, I said, I'd love to go. And I especially wanted to speak to the ones closest to school because I wanted to let them know that, hey, these are our kids and we can't, especially when you're so close, they can walk there from school. So I tried to appeal to the clerk on how important it was for the town to not have this happen. And they should be known as the place you can't get a vape, right? If you're not under 21. So no, it was interesting to go. Jason, as usual, was great. We had people from the state with us, and hopefully the message goes out that it's not something we want to have to happen in our town. So thank you for that.
Very good.
Anything else?
No, that's it.
Just one quick thing on the correspondence I got. Did you see this in your packet? It's on Problem Gambling Awareness Month. All they asked me for is, would we be willing to do this? I just said, I'll talk to the selectmen and see if they want to designate through a resolution that North Stonington recognizes through a resolution that this is Problem Gambling Awareness Month. So I'll leave that up to you and Nicole. Nicole's not here, so I don't mind doing it. If you'd like to do it, we can just vote to do it. I'll sign it.
Yeah, since it's March and we don't really want to wait till the next meeting, and I don't see there's no cost involved. There's nothing. We're just
taking a stance.
Yep. So I'll make a motion to have you sign this and approve.
Great. Then I'll second that. I'll sign it tomorrow and fax it back to the email it back to the company I got it from. So, all right. Thank you. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All right. 2-0. I'll send that out tomorrow. Thank you. These are some of the things we told Nicole we're going to pass when she wasn't around, right?
Right.
So, okay. Moving right along. Grand list. So, I had a really good week last week. And this is one of the things that made my week a good week. Suzanne was away. That did not make it a good week. But one thing was there was some money discovered in the grand list, and this is what happened. So I always felt uncomfortable from the day that Darrell presented this to the Board of Finance. I always felt the number seemed smaller than I thought it would be. And I know we've taken somewhat of a hit on the additional veterans exemption and also on the way we estimate what our car taxes are, the way they've changed it on used cars now. So we did take a hit on that, but we had enough to make up with some of the other income in town. So I asked Darrell and Cecile to look at it again, and they went back to QDS and they found on it's the page part 3, personal property, in the line 22, cables, conduits, etc. They found that 60,757, excuse me, 60,757,000. That was nowhere near that. The way the QDS looked at it, they were not taxing it correctly, and they were found it. So if you look at our early revenue, which I'm going to go back to the draft one, hang on one second. Yeah, our first draft, we had under line A100, we had 17,916,097, which gave us an increase of $127,208, and that was at 98.5% collection rate. With the changes that they just made, that number went from 17,916 up to 18,213. It bumped that number from 127,208 up to 424,434. So now total revenue, which was 487,490 back on draft one, now is 748,922. So that was a very significant jump. And I thank Darrell and Cecile to go back and do the investigation on that, and they did. And great for the town to realize a more accurate revenue rate than we had before. When you're looking at the budget, and I'll explain this to the Board of Finance tomorrow when I present that, when they look at it and they see that revenue line grow up by so much, I just want to let you know how that happened.
So that's great news. How do we make sure that the rest is accurate?
So they went through the QDS is well known. They do a lot of this for a lot of towns. And this particular mistake was made more than just North Stonington, the way they were reacting to this particular line. So Cecile and Darrell spent quite a bit of time going through the whole thing again with them. And this is the common mistake they were making with all the towns. And yeah, I guess when you pay a third party to do this, you're hoping it's going to be correct, right? That's what you pay for. Right. And it was an oversight on their part. We caught it. I mean, if it's at least it's in favor of, it's early in the budget season, and it's in favor of the town. It would have been a lot worse if it was the other, went away around the other way, and we already had come close to passing a budget, and we found out there was an issue. So I'm good with it the way it came out. Any questions on that? Suzanne, if you see Nicole pop on, will you just let us know? Okay. Okay. Number 8, Boombridge appropriation. So here's a story on this. You've got an appropriation in your packet, and there's a number of pages. So what happened on this? We all know that Boombridge was closed. Actually, bridge on Boombridge Road was closed for a number of years. And in that time, the bridge finally officially opened up with a river cutting on January 6, 2021. That was the day the cows walked over the bridge. And on October 24th of 2022, which is almost 2 years later, that money was sitting in the in capital, and we decided to deobligate it. And why not? It had been sitting there almost 2 years doing nothing, and we ended up deobligating around $57,000, I think it was. So we deobligated it. And then on January 27th of 2023, so more than 2 years later, an independent audit or external audit came into play. I guess it took them 2 years to audit the entire bridge refurbishing. And one of the vendors that we dealt with, the contractor who did the bridge, had a copy of this audit and said, wait a minute, I think North Stonington owes us some money here. And it turned out that when we were getting payments on the bridge, there was money put into a small escrow account for bonding. And the amount was total amount was $9,528.81. So the company called Melissa a few weeks ago and said, hey, I think you owe us a little over $9,000. And we got hold of the state. All the paperwork you have in that packet that comes with the appropriation backs up what they were saying. And we do agree that we owe them that money. Now, since it was already deobligated, we no longer have a line item for that. There's only one other way we can get money that's non-budgeted is through an appropriation. So that's why there's an appropriation in your packet tonight for $9,528.81. It's to the those previously deobligated funds that we have to now pay back to this bridge company, because actually it's their money. We got paid. We've been paid in full, but we owe them that money. It was just because of the amount of time that passed, and why would we, 18 to 20 months after the fact, why would we think that money sitting in capital would be there for any reason? So we deobligated it. So when we deobligated roughly 57,000, if we knew about this, we would have deobligated that minus the 9,700. So that's where we are. If you can, what I'd like to do, if we can, we don't have to do this tonight, but I'd like to do is, this is on the agenda for the Board of Finance tomorrow. If we approve this tonight, it makes sense to me that all the documentation's here to back it up. So I'd love to discuss it.
All right. So based on your research, it's accurate.
My research, Melissa's research, in the state. Yes, it's accurate. We got paid in full. So we got paid everything that was owed to the town plus this 9,000.
What was the year that this should have been paid out in?
So the bridge opened in the famous date, January 6, 2021. That's when the cows came over the bridge. And then they went back to Wesley because they said the taxes were too high. So they went back to Wesley. And then on October of 2022 is when the Board of Selectmen, we deobligated because the money had sat there for roughly 20 months doing nothing. And then we get this audit came out on January 27th of 2023, months after we deobligated and 2 years after the bridge was finally opened. So I guess it took the state 2 months to figure it out.
So I'll make a motion to send this for a appropriation of $9,528.81.
And I'll second that motion. Is there any other discussion on this? And if we approve it tonight, I'll present this to the Board of Finance tomorrow. No discussion?
Nope.
Okay. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. 2-0. The second appropriation this evening is a little bit stickier because I found out something yesterday, and I never shy away from constructive criticism, or if I've done something wrong, how to do it right. It wasn't that we did something wrong, but it's something I didn't know. It hasn't happened before. So there's an appropriation for $3,052 for Perkins Coie. It's our latest bill from the our tribal council, the attorneys that handle tribal affairs, and each of the towns got their bill. This was our share of the bill. It wasn't very big, and so I was planning on doing this. I let Sean know I was planning on doing this tonight and then tomorrow, and he said, well, Bob, you can't take appropriations from the same line twice in the same fiscal year without going to a town meeting. I said, really? I did not know that. And if you look at our undesignated fund, we did it twice last year, but it was in 2 different fiscal years. So when we did it, we have 2 consecutive Perkins Coie invoices, one on April 24th and one on November 20th. But that's 2 different fiscal years, so it didn't come into play. But now I said, it's not 20,000. Why do I have to go back to the town? I said, because can't do it twice. And he showed me the statute, it's a state statute. I read it. He's correct. And then when I mentioned to Suzanne, she said, "Oh yes, I remember that from my days in Groton. It can't be done." So I sent an email today. He says, "Why didn't you just ask for more appropriation because there'd be more bills?" And I said, "It's tough to go to the Board of Finance and say, I think there might be more bills. I have no idea how much they're going to be. So give me more money." Like, how do you do that? So I did send a letter to Jenna McLean today saying that I apologize. I had planned on paying this to you probably within the next week or two, but now I can't. I have to go to a town meeting, and my next town meeting is not until May 5th. But while we're waiting, it's not going to break the bank. It's $3,000 to a company that's probably multi-billion-dollar company. So while we're waiting, I'm not going to get any more invoices between now and June 30th. Because if I am, and you can give me an approximate, I can ask for an additional appropriation at another meeting and go to the town meeting with 2 appropriations rather than 1. So she's going to get back to me and let me know if she doesn't think there's going to be any more between now and June 30th. But if there's going to be another one, I might as well ask for them both between now and the town meeting.
So do you want to wait on this one until she gets back to you? There's no point of going forward with it if we don't know if that's the total, because if it's not going to go to a town meeting till May anyway.
I could hold off, but I was going to do it just to have it done, but I can hold off. I don't have.
We're at 0 on that line item, correct?
You were less than 0 because we have an appropriation against it already. So I don't mind waiting. I can talk about this tomorrow night at their meeting. We'll just tell them I'm not asking for appropriation, but tell them why in case there's a second one. And we have plenty of Board of Finance meetings between now and May 5th. So
right. Yeah, I'd prefer to wait until they tell you exactly.
No, that's fine.
Think there's any more.
It was a surprise to me, but that's okay because I'm not one to not worry. If I can learn something, I'll learn it. And that was 2 things that he brought up. 2 things he brought up, and that was one that made sense to me. So, and he backed it up with the statute. So,
and I wouldn't be against even putting a little extra on this in case. So it would just go back to the undesignated account after.
It does, but I just hate to taxpayers, as you like to say, tax without a reason. So,
right, but we wouldn't be, because if it was just going back to the undesignated, we're not basing our mill rate on the undesignated account.
No, but it's now taxpayer dollars that are sitting in a rainy day fund that maybe didn't have to be.
But it's just sitting until June 30th. Really?
Why?
Because if we don't spend it by then, we just go, if we don't spend it this fiscal year, it just goes back in the undesignated account.
Right, but it doesn't go back to the taxpayer though.
No, but we're not taxing them on it. It's already in that account.
That's true.
I'm just saying, I'd hate something come up. You have to call Perkins Coie, and then it's a $500 bill or something, and now we don't have them anything.
No, it makes sense. I'll talk about this. It's on their agenda, but I'll hold off on asking for the.
Gary's got his hand up.
Am I unmuted?
Yeah, I think I can hear you, so I guess so.
Sorry. Just curious, Bob, and you might not know, but what are the terms and conditions of the contract say? So they should have billing terms in there as far as how frequent they give the bills. You shouldn't be surprised like this.
Well, it really depends on action. So it depends on they're not in control of all the action. It depends on what tribes are doing and what action they're taking, and they're reacting to those actions. So they can give me an idea. Like when I spoke to her earlier, she didn't think we were going to have any more between now and June 30th. She was going to get back to me.
No. It's not about the actual expenditure. It's about their obligation to bill promptly.
Okay, so again, they're not going to bill me unless they have an action. And what they had position papers they had to put out in the month of January. So that's what this is, just reflective of that. They may not have another action between now and, August of next summer. So this coming summer.
Yeah, well, maybe I assume their contract's going to come up at some point. Maybe we should tighten things up a little bit so you have a little bit more horizon as to what's coming and when.
I don't know if we have a contract, Gary, because it's been a company we've dealt with solely since the 1990s.
And that's kind of the gap I'm sort of trying to highlight to you. Maybe we need to tighten this up a little bit. So you're not in this position again, Bob.
But it also would be a four-town contract, right?
It was multiple, well, it's not just us, Preston and Ledger, but they also deal with Kent. And I don't think they have Colchester. But because they're probably the most expensive attorney, expensive and expertise wise, the number one attorney when it comes to these affairs in the country. They also have a lot of towns on the West Coast they deal with because it's a national company. And they have all our history from the 1990s. It'd be tough to have someone else come in and not know. They're bringing a lot to the table, a lot of knowledge.
And I think they're a valuable resource. I think they're the right resource. I'm just saying contractually, there's opportunity to tighten this up. None of the towns should be in a position where they get a bill and don't know how to pay it for whatever.
Well, it's not that we don't know how to pay it or we can't afford to pay it, but because of the statute that was brought to my attention yesterday, I just have to follow the correct process. So,
And in the meantime, they're not getting paid. So
no, but I did get a hold of them. They said I rather than just not pay them, I sent an email today to let them know the situation, why they weren't going to get paid till May, and if there's any other bills I need to know about them between now and then. But no, I understand what you're saying, Gary, and this is probably the cloudiest position that we have with anybody because we just don't know what's going to happen. It's very reactive to
and when we had them come speak to us as the Board of Finance, a couple of us, I think Nona and I mentioned the opportunity here to just sort of tighten up the structure a little bit. So
I was just agree. So I'll probably bring this up again. I will bring it up tomorrow, the Board of Finance, because it's on the agenda, and just mention I will not be asking for an appropriation because it was not approved tonight at the Board of Selectmen, and the reasons why. And then if I get more clarification on any additional invoicing between now and June 30th, I'll go into a subsequent Board of Finance meeting and ask them for the total appropriation rather than piecemeal it.
okay, I'm signing off for now.
All right, great, thank you. Okay. Brett, did you have a chance to review the maintenance agreement at all?
I did.
Okay. Any comment on it? I did talk to the Board of Ed chair a little bit about it, and obviously we have to approve it first before it goes to them for them to approve it. But yeah, that's why I just wanted you to look at it, see if there's something that you wanted to change, if there's anything that you thought was, and again, we know this is going to be a living document that's going to change. I can't imagine that everything that's in this document that we realize today might be different next year or the year after as we actually live through it. But I think it was a good starting point anyway.
Yeah, like I said, the only questions I have on the surface is where it says fire suppression, and I brought it up at the joint meeting, and alarm systems. I just want to make sure cameras and everything aren't included when they consider alarm systems as part of that bill.
You said are or aren't?
Not included.
And I think that's going to be part of the negotiation with them, is a starting point that what's included, what isn't. And I agree with you. I don't think cameras should be included.
Right.
So that's something that's attached to the bill that they chose to attach for whatever reason. I mean, it's great reasons why, I get it, but it's not something that comes with the base model, right? It's an extra.
I mean, and that typically doesn't come with any alarms system. So fire alarms maybe, but most commercial contracts, obviously, when you're leasing, don't maintain the alarms and all that, those things as well. So,
and what we're going to do, I'd like to do is okay with you is, I could see it working kind of like this. So Randy finds something over there that needs to be fixed. He gets a hold of Alan, who gets a hold of me. If it's something that's got to be a quick fix and it's not a lot of money, we'll take care of it. Then we'll decide. I'll bring it back to the Board of Selectmen and say, this happened. I don't expect this to happen every week, but this happened. I think it's either town or school maintenance. What do you think, Brett? What do you think, Nicole? And we decide as a board if we think it's a town or a school maintenance issue.
yeah. And then the only other factor is that emergency repairs. I understand they have to let us know within 24 hours, but I think if it's emergency repairs, that they can let the first selectman, if it's the superintendent reaching out to the first selectman, I think that should be done before it's actually ordered or
Well,
done. So,
oh,
because
yeah, I
that
don't-
could be almost instant, right? I call you. I mean, you're easily accessible when you're out of town. You designate someone, but I just have seen and heard on some of those meetings what might be considered an emergency to them might not necessarily always be an
all
emergency.
right, where did you see that?
So
in
that's
here?
under number 4, reporting and approval of repairs.
No, I would agree with you. So it takes 2 seconds to pick up the phone and let me know what's going on. So if there's a leak in the roof right now that's, infiltrating a classroom, the leak's not going to stop right away. So call me, let me know what you're doing. I can call Alan and say, let's go look at it, see what the situation is. I
just-
agree with you on that.
So I'd like to add that in.
So what's the wording that you'd like to add?
If I notice the other party within 20, so the other, proceed with repairs, responsible party must contact
How
the
about,
first selectman prior to proceeding with,
can we cross out that party may proceed with repairs? After notifying the town? After
Yeah,
notifying the-
yeah. Well, I wouldn't say may, because what if there is a disagreement? So I would say the responsible party must contact the first selectman.
Prior to making repairs?
Yeah. And you're okay with the $5,000?
Yeah, I was okay with everything else, and but I do see your point on that, and we wouldn't have to find out. Again, it's not something that it's take more than a minute to make a phone call. If they can't get a hold of me, and go to Alan, or vice versa. So
Right, and I would just think, I would also put in as somewhere, that they must still follow the town's purchasing policy when it comes to repairs on some of this stuff. Because if it's our money, they should follow our policy.
right, so if we're doing repairs, we know that's going to. But I'm going to put in all cases the town purchasing policy must be followed. Something
Yes.
like that. I just put a separate line for that. So what I'll do is, unless Nicole reaches out with some other changes, I'll retype this and bring it to our next Board of Select meeting for us to sign off on it.
All right, it looks like we have a hand up in the audience.
Who was it?
2 for 2.
Oh, Gary, you're back.
Yeah, we seem to be spending a lot of time dancing around the tenant landlord terms, and I a lot of this, to make it read correctly, should have that injected. The town is the landlord for the facility, in my mind. They own the facility, the asset belongs to the town, and the school is the tenant of that facility. And keeping that in mind, and maybe adding it where required, might help clarify what you guys are wrestling with. Just the thought.
Oh, you mean the identification of tenant and landlord?
Yeah. So if you go into this thing and you identify you're the town's the landlord, the school's a tenant, and then when you start redoing the words, rather than saying must notify the Board of Selectmen or the selectmen, it should just say must notify the landlord.
So in the first line, it says this maintenance agreement is made and entered into on this date, but by and between the town of North Stonington, I can put parentheses, landlord,
Yep.
Yeah.
and the Board of Education, parentheses, tenant. How about that?
Perfect. It might help a little bit. Going back on mute, Bob. Sorry to be a pain.
That's okay. Anything else? Nope. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll fix the verbiage on this, bring it back to whatever our next meeting is. I think it might be like the 18th or something. And then we can vote on it then. As far as I'm concerned, nothing takes place till after June 30th anyway.
Right.
Everything that's happening now is still in the current contract, which is okay. Right, so that's that. What I think we might do is just to give Nicole a little time. What if we made a motion to move 12, 13, 14 up and moved 11 back to after 14? Just not that we're going to spend a lot of time, but
So moved.
okay. So what we're going to do is a motion. I'll second it to move numbers 12, 13, 14 up. It might buy us an extra 5 or 10 minutes and then see if Nicole comes on. If not, we'll start doing the budget discussion. Okay, all those in favor of making that move, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, 2-0. So now the budget discussion will be coming after number 14. So undesignated fund, Mr. Murphy had a suggestion on this yesterday also, which I agree with him. So you'll see on the sheet I gave you, he wanted me to add the appropriation numbers like AA 2024-002, 004, and so on, which just helps identify where the appropriation came from. So you'll see it on the sheet.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. I went through and I found out the appropriations of what numbers were on them, and I attached them to this. So now each time we get an appropriation, you'll see the two in red. So the red, as it says, these are not approved yet. So after tomorrow, the one in 9,528, if it's approved by the Board of Finance, that will go into black. And then the 3052 will stay in red until we vote on it.
So are these numbers based on fiscal year or anything? So I see 2023 to 2024. AA.
So I think that this year, definitely, where it says 2025, 01, 02, 03, we've been following the program.
Okay.
Last year, we did the 05. Prior to that, the two between 004 and 05 didn't have numbers on them. We did them as just 23, 24, 24, 25. And again, some of that is my fault, just not understanding, because this was typically done by the admin finance officer in the past.
Okay.
So not understanding that. And I didn't have a finance department last year, as we said. So that was moving forward, we're going to have the right nomenclature on, put it that way. So that if there's another one in this fiscal year, it'll be 2025-004.
All right. Very good.
So the good news on this is we're current level right now is 3,961,874.33, which puts us at 17.04%. And I have above that what the policy is. But what's going to happen to that number? So we know that as of today, none of the 426,153 that was approved as a earmarked and taken out of the undesignated fund back on October 6th of 2023 has been spent as of yet. That's the roof, the HVAC, in these fields. Once that's spent, if it's spent, 340,922 will come back, which will go back in the undesignated fund. Just like you'll see up above on 122 of 2025, we got the 395 back from the steep grant from a few years ago. Also, the 58,000 that has already been earmarked and taken out of the undesignated fund for the grants, the trail grants. Once that's spent, the entire 58,000 is going back in, because we're doing that as in kind through the town garage, the work. So that entire monies go back in. And then number 5, the note on that is the anticipated give back once the audit has been completed is 517,973.93. It's unaudited. We're hoping when the audit is presented sometime in mid to late March, that we're somewhere near that number. If those things all happen, as well as I put down some positive factors looking at the possible give back for next year, we have tuition reimbursement is going up by 104,000 from last year to this year. Short-term investments, Sean has told me is going to be about 105,000. And if we do a deobligation of funds at the town meeting in May, that number is 124,993. So all that is they go back in the undesignated fund, but it bodes well for next year's give back. And that's just, I just wanted to give the Board of Finance a clearer picture on where we are on the undesignated fund. And I thought having that before they get into some serious budget discussions would be helpful for them.
So, hold on one second.
There's some things that aren't in this, like we've got an auction coming up, a sale of some trucks from the highway department, things like that that are not in here because they haven't happened yet.
So am I getting this right? So based on your predictions of notes 1 through 5, say,
Yeah,
you expect our undesignated balance to be, is that 4.8 million? Close to it?
probably, I didn't have it, probably pretty close to that, except
4.87. Yeah,
yeah, I do, but the thing is, because with the secret, we waited so long the last time, hopefully we wouldn't have to wait as long this time. That was because of the mix up with the CHRO. We never know when the work's going to get done and then when we're going to get the money back. So I didn't want to just assume that would go back in, but it would go back in eventually. Now, let's say that we never do any of the steep grant from 2023, then the entire 426, 153 goes back.
instead of the 340.
Right, 340 is 80%.
So that
of that.
puts us well above that 17%.
Right, and we're trending well for next year.
So that'll give the Board of Finance some work to do on how they're going to handle that.
And I didn't even take into consideration like the EB building, the winery, things like that. Good things are happening in the town right now.
But these numbers are pretty firm and
They're pretty
hard
firm.
numbers.
They are. The 517 is. I have a lot of faith in Melissa is coming up with that number. And I think we'll be somewhere in that ballpark.
So that's significant. Okay.
Okay. So that just, again, I gave that to you and Nicole. It's in her pack, which I left in her basket. And I'll give that to the Board of Finance tomorrow evening. Just the overall things are trending well for the town of North Stonington. Okay. If there's no other discussion on that, you want to do tax refunds?
Yeah, so I'll make a motion to refund taxes in the amount of $791.61 to Glenn Giordano and Chelsea Groton Bank.
Okay, I'll second that. Any additional discussion? I am hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that's done. I really don't have any old business tonight to discuss. So I guess we could go to the budget. We can start it and see if Nicole joins in as we're speaking about it.
Okay.
This is our last meeting prior to, I have to present this to the Board of Finance tomorrow. I've actually created a, and I'll email it out to you once I get it finished tomorrow morning. I didn't finish it because I knew there's going to be some changes in the numbers tonight, but I have a presentation for them. I already have my PowerPoint done for April 21st, believe it or not. So, but the tomorrow's presentation will be draft 3 plus any changes we make tonight, which will become now draft 4. So there's 2 changes I want to address right off the bat, which if you agree to them, and if Nicole gets on and she agrees to them, would lower this budget by an additional $38,000. And what that would do would lower the percentage, our increased percentage to 4.12%. And that's with the $100,000 taken from the school maintenance. If we took the $100,000 out, we'd be down to $138,540 as an increase and a percentage of 2.39% increase, which is lower than last year by quite a bit. So before I mention what the 2, and they're pretty good size reductions that I'm going to entertain and ask you to consider, is when we send out a tax bill to the taxpayer, they get one tax bill. They don't get one from the town and one from the school. It's one tax bill. And for them, $38,000 coming out of that tax bill, whether it comes out through the town or the school, really doesn't matter as long as it's a deduction. I think we know that the Board of Ed is up against a tough budget year, just looking at how things are trending. And I see how all the other towns are trending also. And all the first selectmen and mayors are saying the town budgets aren't too bad, but the Board of Finance budgets are going to be a little bit tougher to
Board of Ed
to negotiate. So with that said, I think that we as the Board of Selectmen have to take into consideration and not just think that doesn't matter because it's just the Board of Ed budget. No, it matters. It matters to the taxpayer. And we have to take into consideration their budget when looking at our budget. And because of that, there's two lines I want to address. One is on the per diem line for the firefighters. Now, the North Southern Fire Company, as far as of right now, everything that was in the capital is still in the capital. And I'm not looking to make any changes to their operating budget. But when I look at the per diem, it was $55,000 per person. So 2 per diems is 110,000. And I know that it was mentioned that they haven't had a raise in 3 or 4 years, and they wanted to jump up to, I think it was 147,000. Let me look at that line item. I think it's 26. 2614. So B2614 is saying that they're proposing a $147,000 total, which is a $37,000 increase. So I took into consideration that it wasn't a raise in the last 3 or 4 years, and I put in a raise similar to what the town hall and the town garage guys got, which is a 2.75 raise. So I did that every year for the last 4 years, and it came up to just around 62,000 per diem. So it went from 55 to 62. If I take 62 times 2, I'm up to 124. 124 is $23,000 less than 147. So my feeling is, acknowledging the fact that there was no raises given in that line item for the first 4 years we've had it, and using a very similar number that the town workers had and the town garage people had, using that number as a guide, I come up to going from 55 to 62 per diem with a total of 124, which would allow us to reduce that 147 to 124, which is a $23,000 savings.
Now, Bob, on that one, I thought they were going to 60 from their presentation, and the extra in there were the other fees of employment.
That's not how I saw it. I didn't see that. So you're saying they were doing as far as it was the pay plus equipment?
Not equipment, like Social Security or like a taxes. They were adding in all the.
But isn't that part of their insurance and their overall insurance?
No, it's the extra payroll type. No, not fringe, but like the taxes that the town side of those payments.
And so they don't qualify for any kind of any additional medical.
No, and maybe I'm saying it wrong. I'm talking about.
Was it for the GRIA?
Like payroll taxes and the Social Security, so the percentage that they have to pay, not what's taking out of the paycheck, but when you have an employee, you have to pay certain percentages. And I'm pretty sure that's where it came from. I think they only put in 60,000 an increase. I'm trying to get back to their presentation.
I'll look at that also.
But I will say, even if that is in there, those expenses has always been there. So I'm not sure why it was never included before.
Correct. When it was $55,000 a year, and if they didn't spend it all, because multiple people fill the per diem slot, at the end of the year they would say, okay, there's $6,000 up. The town would like to have the town get that back to us.
Yeah, so they put in 60,000 per firefighter.
But as you said, why is that different?
So that they explained it at that meeting was all the extra payroll.
Okay, so what I'm saying is that I'm willing to go to 62,000.
But they have to cover the extra payroll stuff.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, that's what I'd like to do. I mean, we're not touching the capital. We're not touching the operation funds. We are at the end of the year. In the past years, we're giving them, when they've asked, can we get whatever the remaining balance is? Can we get that back? And we've said yes.
Okay.
And sometimes that's been as high as $5,000, $6,000, $7,000.
Right.
So
I just
again,
remember it being a discussion because it didn't add up when they said 1660, and then
so I think I would like to remove it, and then and bring it to the Board of Finance tomorrow. If, when we go to the public hearing, the fire company can come in and explain why they need that,
that's-
why they need to put that back in.
Yeah, I'm on board with that.
Okay. So it'd be 124. Yeah, so each line item, which was, it was 55 prior. Excuse me. Yeah, 110. So we went from 55 to 110 because we brought on 2. And now it'd be 124. And then the second thing is on the library, which is on miscellaneous. Again, when I look at, I'm looking at the library, I'm also thinking about what the school budget's going to look like. And I think if we can help them out in any way, I think it makes sense because by helping out the school budget, we're also helping out the taxpayer. So they've asked for 115,000 in my, and they've got 100,000 in the last 2 years. And I think we should stay at the 100,000. That extra 15,000 may come in handy in the Board of Ed budget or somewhere else in the town's needs.
Yeah. No, I agree for the most part on that. I didn't know, thinking about it, should there be some increase, small increase, whether it's a 2.5% increase to cover the rise in expenses before we shoot ourselves.
So
in
if
the
we
foot
go
with
back, 5 or 6 years ago, it was 30,000, then it
Right.
went to 16.
I know we
So I mean, they've been pretty good jumps. I think we were at 85,000 3 years ago. I still think 100,000 is a big number.
Okay.
And I think that if we weren't up, I think it's going to be a tough budget year. And if we went up against the kind of what we're looking at as a town, as taxpayers, I would agree, Brett. But I think that the library is wonderful, and I know that, but it still kind of falls under the need to have versus, the nice to have versus the need to have. And I think it's a wonderful organization. I think 100,000 is not something to turn your nose up at. It's been a big jump over the last few years. And I also understand where they'd like to get eventually up to 1% of the budget, which would be over 200,000. But I think this particular year, with what I'm seeing in the paper, and what I'm seeing with all the other cities and towns, I think it's going to be it's going to be a tough budget year for towns. And again, because we send our taxpayers one tax bill, not two. I think anything we can do to keep the budget number down on the town side will help the taxpayer overall.
Okay.
If you want to disagree, that's fine.
Yeah, we can decide if we have to adjust
Again,
later.
it's something that can be lobbied to be put back in later, but I think it's a starting place. I'd like to go to the Board of Finance tomorrow evening with a budget I feel very comfortable with. And is there any, so we didn't vote on the first one with it?
No, because I think we should maybe talk through them and then vote at the end, and maybe
See if Nicole's
Nicole
on,
be
okay.
on at the end.
So that's the two I have. Do you have something else?
I do.
Okay, what do you got?
So I have, in addition, in the first selectman salary of 3% would bring it to 1950 an additional. I understand hesitation with that, but I think it's the right thing to do. I think it needs to be somewhat standard in how we move forward with that role, and the amount of time that role takes up, and the amount of work that you have invested in it as well. But if if you're basing the fire company's increase based on what the town's getting and the employees of the town hall are getting, it's an elected official, but it's still like an employee of the town. And I feel like reducing that or not taking that is just, it's the wrong path to go down.
So
and I know you are not in favor of that. So whether Nicole comes on and we can vote for that in, or the Board of Finance is listening and they can advocate for that, I think it's one of the things that we should be consistent. So we're well below we're the lowest in the state from my calculations based on someone that's there by far. We're not a few $1,000s off. We're about $20,000 off the next closest town with our budget size. So I think for $1,950 just to keep that moving in the right direction, even though it's well under where it should be, I think it's the right thing to do.
Well, I appreciate you're saying that those kind of words, and I did get a healthy raise the last 2 years in a row. I just wanted to get back to where the previous first selectman was 4 years ago when we're there.
But that was 4 years ago.
Right, so
The cost of eggs have gone up. But I do have some other decreases to try to.
All right, so let me just say this about this. If you vote to put that in, if we have to cut our budget, if the Board of Finance says we need to cut our budget, that's the first place I'm going.
And I'm okay with that. If that's the direction we get from the Board of Finance, I'm okay with that.
So what number is it you're advocating that we put in there?
$1,950 increase.
Okay. Again, that's the first place we'll go if we have to cut.
I understand.
Okay.
Hopefully,
What else you got?
So with a decrease, I was looking at the registrar of voters
Okay.
budget. And
Is this with their decrease they just took?
this is the revised one here.
So they're asking for 37,1539 increase versus the previously the 7,000. I think Connie explained there was a when she was doing the budget, there was a mathematical error, and she sent out something today. So what do you see there? That's
2,100.
B21. Originally, those numbers were increases of 7,168. And now they've been reduced to 3,715.39. And that change came to us on February 27th.
So I think mine actually come out of the poll workers. So I guess I have a few questions on it.
Okay.
So we did a 3% increase for the registrar of voters, plus we added 128 days or 128 early voting hours per registrar.
Okay.
Those are based on the numbers below, I believe, which shows early voting for a primary, an election for the election, for the primary and the early voting primary. So those 128 hours, how are we looking to do that? Are we automatically adding that into the increase, or is that something we're going to then pay hourly above and beyond? So if that early voting primary, if we have a primary, which we haven't had a municipal primary in probably 12 years, those early voting hours, is that reduced from the 128, or we just put the 128 as part of their salary no matter what?
So I think if there's hours that aren't worked, they'd be reduced off this. So there'd be money left in the budget for at the end of the year, which you go back to your undesignated.
Right, but we don't pay the registrars by the hour. So that's why I'm confused on how we account those 128 early voting hours.
So if we get through the election season, which is it's in the early part of the new budget year, and that's in November, and we know then that something didn't happen. The primary would actually happen when, in like October, September. If it didn't happen, then we would know that that's something that right then would be reduced from their pay, correct?
That's my question, because I think the way it is now, they get that stipend no matter how many hours they work. So if we put this in as 12,228 as their stipend or their pay, they just are justifying how it came up to that increase with.
So you're talking about 12,228.39?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that they're not on time clock plus, Suzanne?
No.
Okay.
No, and no registrars are, from what I've seen, okay. But that's just one of those questions, but that's not where my main deduction was. So okay. I was proposing a $1,562 deduction in that September primary for the municipal election, based on we haven't had one in, like I said, at least 12 years or more. And if we needed to have one for some reason, I think that's the prime case for going for an appropriation, because it's only poll workers' wages, which we would have that money already in there. So we could go for an appropriation at any point during that year to at least before November or so to account for it. So that's one of the things, yeah, if there was to be one, we would need it, but historically, we haven't had one. So to me, that would be the prime example to go to the Board of Finance and say, we need an appropriation because we're having a municipal primary. Instead of putting it in and having that money floating around, I'd rather put that to something else.
Do you think that there's a possibility of having more referendums this year than they're calling for 2 referendums and 1 additional referendum, which I think the additional referendum, they're probably referring to a possible library referendum, correct, in the spring?
Potentially.
And then the 2 referendums are probably the budget, and if the budget failed, there'd be a second referendum.
But those are other things we'd have to go for an appropriation if all of a sudden we find that we're not passing things. Just so you know, Nicole did text. She just landed and she's not sure she's going to be able to land.
Okay.
They're not even at the airport yet.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay.
So I was thinking we take that out, 1562. And then that's not touching that registrar's extra early voting pay, but it's just for poll workers. And if we needed that, we have time to go to the Board of Finance for an appropriation, and we're talking $1,560.
So that would be out of B2102.
Yes,
So B2102, you want to reduce that
by 1562.
1562. Is that even 156,200? Correct.
Yes.
Okay. And at this point, you want to leave the registrar's numbers where they are?
Because it's hard to, I don't even know what hourly rate they use to add in that 128.
Okay. So if there's no primary, we can address that. We'll have to figure a way to address that if there's no primary.
And we'll have some time to maybe get some of those answers by.
No, even though it's in this budget worksheet, don't forget it's in the budget itself.
Yeah.
As line item B2102. So it's in the total operating expense. So we
The
can.
1562 is in that.
Oh, excuse me, the B21 and the B2101 is in the actual
Right, that's a
registrar
separate
line.
line, yeah.
Correct. So I think it's leaving it in there for now, and then knowing that we might have to do an adjustment if things don't happen now. What if they don't happen then, but there's a 3rd referendum on the budget or
So
something?
there's 3 budgeted referendums.
Yeah, but let's say there's 3 just for the budget, and
Then no matter what, that's an additional appropriation at some
right.
point.
But there'll be they'd have to. Now there's no early voting on referendums, thank God.
Right.
But they would have to. There'd be an extra referendum they'd be working it. So
Yeah.
all right, I think that's something we can monitor.
Right.
But
Because it's more than doubled. Right? No, it's $3,700 increase based on early voting and the 3%. Right. So I guess I can break that out real quick.
And
So
I'll be
if I
honest with you, the
do-
3% is there as a placeholder. We don't know if it's going to be 3. We're going to that'll be part of the negotiations. It could be somewhere between 2.5 and 3.5. I
So
don't know
that's
where it is.
$255.39 plus 8,513, 8768.39. So 12, 8 minus 8768. That's the 3460 divided. What was the hour? So that means if I'm doing the math, how they did the math, their hourly rate for those 28 hours is $27 an hour.
Okay.
So maybe we look at that as that factor if some of those.
So it's
Early
27,
votings don't
$27 times 128 hours.
Yeah, that's how I took the 3%.
Off.
I added the 3% to what they had last year. And then I subtracted the increase and then just divided by the 128 hours.
Sounds like good math.
Okay.
Is that the new math?
It's the new math.
Okay. All right, so we're going to do the 1562. What we'll do is when we get done with this, we'll go back through each change and vote on them. So we'll have a record. And then, in the morning, we'll make the changes and I'll get that out to the selectmen and the Board of Finance, what the new numbers are.
And then,
Can
two
we just-
other questions.
Just so I'm clear on the operating expenses, it reduces it to 17,311.25. Is that what
It's,
you're
well,
proposing?
it's 18,873.25 minus 1562.
1562, okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
And then I did ask for backup on the EDC. Did we ever receive that? So I asked twice so
I
far.
have not seen it.
So we asked at the meeting and then we asked
What?
at the second. So I asked for the rec, but I asked for the so, and I said it at both the past two meetings that we used to get a breakdown exactly what that stuff is, what programs they were running.
I know Susan
what's-
Cullen was going to look at it. I've not seen it yet, but I know she was going back to look at it. It's been a couple of years, but we used to get one about 3 years ago. That was a much bigger breakdown.
Yeah, it's a full breakdown of what that operating expenses were. I think it's something we should look at and realizing where EDC is right now and what they've been working on. And it might be only $1,000 difference, but everything adds up. So maybe if this doesn't go forward with the Board of Finance, they push it back. I'd like those answers because now I feel like I'm voting a little blindly on that.
So that's
line
the
item.
B15 line. We know B1501 is pretty much solidified it's the sector number.
Right, exactly. So that
And
one's
it's a-
consistent. Yeah.
Right. It's a sector and it's also, I think two Chamber of Commerce's in
Yeah,
there.
so it's more the operating expenses of the 46, because they increased it $611, but we never,
Last fiscal year and up to now. How far back do you want to go?
well, the detail I would like to see what they've spent so far for this year, but really for their budget purposes, I can send you what an old one looked like, but it's an actual breakdown. This program cost us this money, and if they're doing like the business events, it'll be like, okay, well, we did $800 for this business event. It's a real breakdown.
Emily might have that too, but if you want to send a copy to Suzanne, that'd be good. Emily's, how long has she been on the EDC?
4 years.
So she might
Yeah.
remember that one. Okay.
Yeah. And I think I did give it to Susan when she first started, but that was a while ago. So
Okay.
I will get that. And then the last question is the rec. Did we get any clarification on that 1350? That is the phone and the car allowance.
The only said about that was, and I mentioned it to Tom, we want to track that one of two ways. If he wants it as a stipend, then he would have to do mileage and the things you would have to do when and I said, this is business sense, right? I know this was there when John was there. So it hasn't changed in all those years. So it's either a stipend with backup with mileage and so on, or we should roll it into his compensation, one or the other. So it's clean that way.
Right.
And he said whatever we wanted to do was fine with him. But I imagine it'd be easier to roll it in than try to get.
Well,
a
it is
mileage.
easier to roll in, but I guess it goes back to what is the mileage that we're doing? What are we tracking as mileage? Or where are we going and those kind of things? If you want to just roll it in, yeah, I think we need to roll it in, but that means just change it up to that line item. If you want to give him an additional, if you want to roll it into 1350 in his director pay.
What I didn't do this year, because he had that good size increase last year, I did not include him in my 3% increase.
Right.
Just because someone works for the town, they don't automatically qualify for that 3%.
No, I understand. So I would
he-
move that 13, if you feel like he should get that for his cell phone use and whatever driving he does, because it seems like more that's how it's been. It's just an extra stipend. So let's just put it into the pay where it should be.
All right, so
And
that's
we don't have to
gonna,
worry about any tax implications.
so what is the exact number on that?
So I believe it's 1350. but I can
was.
double check.
Let me just look at so they're B16, correct?
And I think when we talk to the Board of Finance, we just let them know it's not a 1350 increase in pay. He was getting a stipend.
Yeah, so
prior
we're
for
gonna have to
cell
take it out of one line and put it in.
phone. Right, so we have to take it out of the operating.
the administrative expenses.
I'm trying to see that breakdown.
Mileage and cell phone, 13, it's on B1604. So it's on their presentation, not in their, so B1604, $1,300. So we're going to take that out of B1604. And that would, same amount would be added to B16.00. So it doesn't change the budget at all, it
Doesn't
just,
change the budget. And so the question was, yeah, if you want to keep it in, then put it there. If you wanted to take it out and do actual reimbursement, that's another story, so.
so I think it's just cleaner to do it this way. And again, I did not put them in for that 3%. So, all right, so that doesn't change we can go over that tomorrow, Susan. It doesn't
Yeah,
change,
I
but
just
we'll
put
just
a
move,
note.
we'll change it from one line to
So it's
another.
1,300 even. So
1,300 even.
1,300.
Yeah,
So we add that to be 1,600.
and take out a
Take it out of-
1604.
Yes.
Got it.
Okay, anything else?
Do we have so you did put the actual number for the IT coordinator, correct?
Yes, so we did is, I took the number, that's why there was a little bit of a savings there. So if you look at, what is that, B25, right? So you see where that was originally, it was higher, but I made a change on 227 and lowered it. So now we have a 1570.80 savings there. Before that was a slight increase, now it's a decrease.
Okay.
So the changes that were made since the last time we met were the two from the registrars. On the revenue side, the one from the assessor's office on the grand list, the change to the IT coordinator, which is a reduced change. And I think that was the only ones that were made since the last time we got together, other than what we're making tonight.
So then let's want to just go through them all.
Let's go
at
through the
once?
changes we made tonight, and then we can vote on them individually if you like.
We can vote on them as a whole.
Huh?
We can vote them on it as a whole.
We could if you want, but you want to read them out? So we have.
Yeah, read them out and then vote on
All right, so the first one was B1.00 first selectmen's pay increase by $1,950.
Yep.
The second thing is on the Recreation Commission, we're just gonna move that money from one line to another, so it's not gonna affect the budget.
Right.
On the elections, which is B2102, election and town meetings, the operating expense is gonna be reduced by $1,562.
Correct.
On B26.14, that is going to be reduced from 37,000 down to, it's going to reduce to 124, which is a savings of 23,000. And the last one that we have is the library, which should be B30.03. It was asked for 115,000, reduced by 15,000, brings it down to $100,000. And I think that's all we had, right? If it's anywhere near where I had the other ones kind of washed each other out a little bit. So we should be somewhere down to the very low fours when it comes to our budget that I'm presenting to the Board of Finance. And as I presented it both ways, which I said I was going to, without the $100,000 of maintenance, we're going to be down to somewhere around a 2.35-ish increase.
So it's basically a $388 increase over what your pre-math that you already did.
About that, yeah. So it's really not moving the needle much.
No, not based on what you.
Yeah.
So it's moving, I should say for anyone listening, it's moving the needle from the last budget,
Oh, from draft
discussion.
3 to draft 4.
but from your draft that you had coming into this, that you were
Right.
working on.
Correct. So draft 4 will be a good size reduction.
Okay.
And then we'll see where the board, what the,
I'll make a motion to approve that budget as with the amended changes.
Great, thank you. And I will second that motion. I'm sorry that Nicole's not here, but I think she would probably be in agreement for the most part. And if she does come up with something, we can address it if the Board of Finance says that we can either have to add or subtract to our budget. That's when Nicole can weigh in on what she'd like to do.
All right.
All right. Okay. All those in favor of approving this budget as we did it this evening, I can present to the Board of Finance tomorrow evening. Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that's where we are. And I think overall, I got to say, I'm pretty happy with the town budget. When I look at our last 3 or 4 years, we haven't added any new bodies. We've only replaced equipment when it had to be replaced. We haven't dove into any other programs that would be expensive. I think overall, we've really been fiscally responsible in the last 3 or 4 years, and I think it shows in this kind of a budget. Also, I think we've been lucky that the town as a whole has been in some sort of a growth mode. We've had since COVID, we've had some people move in, some businesses move in, some houses built, and I think the town's trending in a positive direction. So I'm happy with where we are. All right, anything else?
Just one thing that's, I'll just make a comment. If at tomorrow's meeting, I don't know if Alan spoke to you, but I did speak to Alan briefly today about the mini excavator that we talk of. And
He spoke to me about it.
okay, he was asking timeline and stuff. So maybe it's something that you approach the Board of Finance and just ask what, they seem like they were supportive of it. But ask what that timeline looks like for when we should bring it to them. Because I'm thinking, he explained that there's a bunch of spring projects coming up that he will be utilizing one for, whether we rent it or we move forward, which to me makes sense. I'm purchasing one. And like I said, I've had a lot of positive feedback from the public on that instead of renting it. So maybe just as you speak to the Board of Finance more, ask them what they think. Are they waiting for, they want the audit numbers completely back before we would even consider that? Or is it something they would consider prior to that? I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, I spoke to Jim today. I thought what I like to see from my side is that we have the audit completed and we know how close we are to that 517. So we know that the undesignated fund is at a higher number than it is today. Also, when I presented that at the time, when we took it out of the capital, I said, I remember Gary, commenting on it, that we had some auctions coming up, some selling off of some equipment up at the transfer station, and then the obligation of some funds. When all those things happen, those are all above and beyond the 517, are more than enough to cover the price of the new excavator. So we would take it out of our budget, and we'd be using monies that we are gaining by the obligation and the selling of old trucks. And we know Gary likes to bring in a new truck, you better get rid of at least one, if not more, old trucks. So that could all happen if we're going to get the audit to us by the end of March. That could all happen in early April. I told Alan if he could hold off and to May to those projects, that gives us more time to get this done this way. If worst comes to worst, where he has to rent it for 1 month, I get it. It's not what we wanted to do, but if it's 1 month, we might be able to live with it. But I really would like to know how much money's in the bank before we do it, so we can move his projects to May and we get all this done in April. And he says that the excavator is on the ground.
Right.
We don't have to wait months for it. We can walk in, here's your money, give me the excavator. I think it makes sense.
But if we have to go to a town meeting for it, though, we'd want to get in on that May.
We'd have to go to a town meeting because it'd be over 20,000. We could call now I've got stuff on the town meeting budget, the budget meeting on May 5th. We were going to have another town meeting in April at one point because of the other thing we were talking about with the ordinance. We could call a town meeting in April if we had to.
Okay. And you're right, 1 month might be one thing, but if we're at 1 month, 2 months, there's $10,000 or whatever it might be that we could have put towards the
But if it's 1 month and if we have to wait till May 5th and we can get an excavator by mid-May, because all those projects will be done in the second 2 weeks. the
Right,
second
that-
2
if
weeks of May.
that falls in play, I
Or
just don't want to
the last
wait.
2 weeks of May and the first 2 weeks of June, right? So we say April, May, June, but it could be end of May, early June too. So
All right.
I think it's a good way to go with the town. I think it's responsible by selling off, but it's also always good to know what we have in the bank versus what we have in the bank versus before we spend it. That's all. Is there somebody online you want to talk to?
Gary
Gary
put his
had his
hand up,
hand
but it came back down.
Gary, I'd love to hear your comments.
I just wanted to know, is there a rent to own option? I mean, has Alan explored, can we rent and start our projects and then buy this once that's been approved, or is it, obviously no prepayment penalty, none of that. We'd be looking for every cent of that rent going towards the purchase price. I lowered my hand because I figured it's Alan's spot, not mine.
Yeah, so that's something I can ask Alan. I think if there's a way to do that, I'd like to do this all without going through any kind of a leasing company, if we could. I'd rather just buy it outright, take the money from the undesignated fund and buy it, and knowing that we're putting money in there. But I guess if it's only a matter of a couple of weeks, we can wait a couple of weeks to get the projects done. If it's going to be more than that, then we have to rent it for 1 month. That'd be a different story. That's when a question would come into play, Gary. But, maybe it's something we can do the last 2 weeks of May and the first 2 weeks in June, and we can just buy it outright if it makes sense. Okay. Any public comment? Any public comment by anyone else that's out there? Anybody online? John? Nothing? Okay. John, you want to mention your meeting on the 25th? And maybe give us a little description of what it's about. Just one, you can, either one, however you want to do it.
John Gatchone, Planning and Zoning. We're going to have a seasonal committee meeting on the 25th of March at the library at 6:30. What it entails is going over a possible ordinance change or regulation change to allow for year-round residences at the lakes. We're in the beginning stages, it's only our second meeting. So we made really big steps the first meeting and going through things, and we welcome anybody to show up to that meeting.
And this is to look at right now the year-round rentals versus the seasonal rentals on the lakes and how the ordinance covers that.
Residents, so not only rentals, but permanent residents. So
Residents, okay.
it covers all of that, yes.
Okay, 6:30 on the 25th at the library.
Yes, sir.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Gary has his hand up.
Gary,
John, when are you guys meeting again? I got a note into Ed Lerner trying to get on the agenda, but I can't seem to get a response out of him.
Planning and zoning is next scheduled meeting is March 13th.
Can we get me on the agenda? Or at least you haven't met in like 3 months. I keep trying to go to a meeting and they keep getting canceled.
I will bring that up to Ed and to Susan, and I will get back to you, Gary.
Thank you very much. See ya.
You're welcome.
all right, thank you, John. Okay, any other public comment? We're on our next meeting, if you don't count the one tomorrow night. Next Board of Selectmen meeting is on March 18th. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.